When it's not being used for movies, television, or film festivals, Tribeca's cobblestone streets are filled with art galleries, boutique shops, lofts, restaurants, and bars. On a daily basis, you can find celebrities and artists mingling around historic brick buildings, making this Manhattan borough one of the hippest areas in New York. Growing up there, just a few blocks away from streetwear and sneaker stores, Salehe Bembury fell in love with Tribeca's evolving diversity and often credits New York as having the biggest influence on him and his craft. With artists as parents, Salehe was exposed to all aspects of race, class, and walks of life. When his mom and dad would talk to their fellow artist friends, Salehe would stand quietly next to them, absorbing the different perspectives of everyone around him. By listening to their conversations, Salehe learned about the importance of passion, even though the topic was never deliberately spoken of. He could just feel it in the way they talked. Every word coming out of their mouths seemed to have purpose. As he grew older, Salehe became more like his parents, and although he wasn't an artist by trade, their social circles were similar. He had friends from all different walks of life. Whether it was his buddies at the Calhoun School or his neighborhood friends, Salehe was constantly hanging out with a diverse group of kids. As sneaker culture started to explode, Salehe and his friends joined the race and began shopping at local stores to find the hottest stuff around. Back then, you couldn't rely on the internet to purchase shoes. Instead, you had to develop a plan for each release. Salehe would ride his bike and take the train to Recon, Classic Kicks, and A-Life, partaking in a sneaker circuit that brought him all around the city, even through the shady neighborhoods that were far from home. A few times he almost got robbed, but in his eyes, that was part of the fun. Buying sneakers was just an excuse. It was the adventure that he enjoyed the most. And as he grew older, he never lost that sense of adventure. But before we get into it, we gotta run it back.
I'm just sitting on the TV watching couch. It get toxic, I ain't boxing. I unboxed me a Glock and I knocked him out. I need an ounce of that kush, I can't go without. I keep slurring my speech, I've been smoking weed I can't pronounce. Man, if anybody snitching, believe it's gon' get announced. But he take it or leave it, I'm sticking firm to the amount. If you seen your boy out in traffic, you must have been en route. Money stupid dirty, can't even put bucks in account.
In 2004, just after graduating high school, Salehe packed up his bags, drove 4 hours north, and enrolled in Syracuse University. It was the perfect fit. And just 5 years later, in 2009, Salehe Bembury walked across the stage, shook a few hands, and grabbed his Bachelor's of Industrial Design degree. Now, with college under his belt, he quickly moved back to New York and started applying for jobs. It was tough finding a company that excited him. He had already passed up on a few boring opportunities and was just about to give up when he looked around his room and saw a pair of Air Jordan 3s tossed on the floor. This instantly brought him back to memories as a kid. He used to love sneakers. He always thought the And ones with no laces were cool, but Jordan 3s were by far his favorite. He also began thinking about his old drawings. He wouldn't draw cartoons like other kids. Instead, he would draw shoes, which most of the time were the ones that his favorite basketball players were wearing. Snapping back to reality, Salehe was just about to end another all-night job search when something caught his eye. Payless Shoes. They were looking for a designer to join their team, and even though his degree wasn't in fashion, Salehe still applied. A few weeks later, after a short interview, Salehe joined Payless Shoe Source as a footwear designer and started his job in the fashion industry. Although he wasn't excited about it, Payless was a step in the right direction. And since they make every kind of shoe, Salehe was busy learning the ins and outs of designing men's, women's, and kids' footwear. But even that couldn't keep him busy. He wanted more. So 3 months later, after a short stint at Payless, Salehe was hired at Fortune Footwear, where he would continue his career as a footwear designer. Unlike Payless, this company worked with brands like Birkenstock and Steve Madden. Now, able to work with more established shoe companies, Salehe spent the next 10 months absorbing as much as he could about the footwear industry. But much like Payless, he eventually got bored and started looking for new opportunities. While searching for a new job, Salehe started spending time at Damon Dash's DD172 art space, going to the many intimate performances from artists like Currency, Mos Def, and Wiz Khalifa. Including music, DD172 also worked on clothes, shoes, and collaborations with bigger brands like Adidas. If you were a talented young creative in New York, you were part of DD172. Wanting to become involved, Salehe started spending as much time as possible at DD172 and began to neglect his work at Fortune. He didn't hate his job. Fortune had taught him a lot, but they didn't have their finger on the pulse like these new kids he was hanging out with. And one night, after a stressful and frustrating day at Fortune, Salehe finally had enough. Finishing dinner, he stood up, grabbed the nearest jacket, and left his apartment to get some fresh air. On his walk to the corner store, Salehe planned out the next move in his career. After much deliberation, he finally convinced himself to leave Fortune and for the first time in his career, do something that he actually wanted to do. Waking up early the next morning, he went to the store and bought a foldable dinner table. Instead of leaving and heading to Fortune for his morning shift, Salehe drove straight to Damon Dash's DD172 studio. Walking in, he was immediately met with confused looks. What was Salehe doing here? It's a weekday. Shouldn't he be at work? Ignoring the awkward tension, Salehe strode past everyone, made his way into the DD172 design office, and began setting up his table. "I work here now," he told them. And to his surprise, despite no application or formal hiring process, they let him join the team. Although he didn't have much experience in graphic design, DD172 respected him for taking the initiative and shooting his shot. Salehe was now right where he wanted to be, in the mix with the hottest up-and-coming creatives around. Becoming a part of this exclusive crowd meant that new opportunities would soon come knocking, and just 6 months later, Salehe found himself being introduced to none other than Jeff Henderson, the innovation director at Haan, a luxury footwear brand that was owned by Nike at the time. While they were talking, Jeff and Salehe spoke adamantly about pushing the boundaries of footwear. Little did he know, Jeff was looking to form an exclusive team to help with a new, Nike-funded project, and Salehe was positioning himself as a key player. Shortly after meeting Jeff Henderson, Salehe left DD172, and in March of 2011, he was hired by Jeff to join the innovation team at Haan. With Nike as their parent company, Haan was in charge of designing the future of dress footwear. Not knowing where to start, Jeff, Salehe, and the rest of the team grabbed a classic wingtip shoe, ripped off the sole, and tried something new. Removing the classic wingtip bottom, they replaced it with a Nike Lunarlon midsole and created the Lunar Grand, a cutting-edge shoe that brought a casual twist to dress wear. During his next 3 years at Haan, Salehe watched the Lunar Grand become their most popular shoe. Not only had one of his designs completely changed the face of the Haan brand, he had altered the public's perception of dress shoes in general. In that regard, Salehe and Jeff had made history together. From then on, Jeff became less of a coworker and more of a friend and mentor to Salehe. Despite Salehe leaving Haan and taking a position with Greats as their footwear design director in 2014, Jeff Henderson and Salehe stayed in touch. Every couple months, they would grab lunch, catch up on life, and discuss their individual plans for the future. Jeff always had something up his sleeve, and during one of their lunches, he let Salehe in on a secret. He was working with Kanye West on his new Yeezy lifestyle and apparel brand, but that wasn't all. He told him that the designers at Yeezy had seen some of Salehe's work and they were interested in having him join the team as well. So, in the fall of 2015, just a year after joining Greats, Salehe left the company, moved to California, and began his new position in men's footwear with Yeezy. Moving to California wasn't easy for him. During his first year, Salehe spent every single day working on Kanye's Season 3 and Season 4 collections. He was so submerged in the work that he barely even noticed he was in LA. But in 2016, when his position at Yeezy ended, it was as if a fog had been lifted. And for the first time, he noticed the beauty in his surroundings. He was close to the beach, steps away from nature, and surrounded by blue and green everywhere he looked. This complete change in scenery improved his life both physically and psychologically. It was impossible for Salehe to be unhappy. And as time went on, he realized he didn't miss New York all that much. California was allowing him to flourish. Now, with time on his hands, Salehe spent the next year connecting with the environment around him. He hiked every day, camped as much as possible, and started making nature a consistent part of his life. But after a year of unemployment, Salehe was low on funds and needed a job. It was time to get back into the workforce, but nothing he saw interested him. He no longer wanted to be just another employee. He wanted to make an impact. So one night, after updating his LinkedIn profile, he saw an interesting person on the side of the screen under the People You May Know section. It was the design director for Versace, one of the highest ranked brands in the world. Not thinking much of it, Salehe's thoughts drifted and he started thinking about his dad. His dad had owned his own business, and growing up in an open space apartment, Salehe spent his entire childhood listening to his dad cold call clients. Even though he was too young to understand what was being said, it didn't matter to him. By listening in, he learned that if you want something bad enough, you have to grind and go get it. His dad had no shame when attacking his goal, and Salehe shouldn't either. Snapping back to reality, Salehe channeled his courage and sent a message to Versace's design director. If it was going to be a completely cold message with no connections or leads whatsoever, he had to make it count. In his message, Salehe explained that the sneaker industry is a multi-billion-dollar business, one that Versace hadn't even tapped into yet. He went on to give examples of other fashion houses that have done it successfully, like Raf Simons and Balenciaga, both of which have made cool sneakers in the past. After giving examples that showed proof of concept, Salehe pitched his idea. Versace's brand DNA could make the perfect sneaker, and by not creating one, they were missing out on a huge opportunity. Despite not thinking he would get a response, Salehe was shocked when 3 days later, an email popped into his inbox from the office of Donatella Versace. "I love your ideas. I want you to come to Milan and tell me more," she said. Salehe was ready. He immediately gathered information on trends and compiled a list of shoes that he thought looked cool. With just a few pages in his notebook and only 1 week left until his flight to Milan, Salehe ran his pitch by some of his closest friends. But to his surprise, they didn't like it. He wasn't taking it seriously enough, they told him. This opportunity was bigger than him, and since there aren't too many people like him in fashion, they said that he should use this chance to pave the way for black youth everywhere. So, with just 1 week left, he threw away his entire original pitch and started from scratch. He went to every store he could think of, saw what was selling, and did extensive research on the market. On top of that, his new pitch included some of his designs and spoke highly of his own talents. His initial 3-page report was now a 40-page presentation, and off to Milan he went. Now in Italy, sitting in a regal, ornate office, Salehe found himself one-on-one with Donatella Versace. He explained how Versace's Medusa and Baroque print could make the perfect sneaker, how his talents could be used to help them enter the sneaker industry and create endless opportunities for the brand. And in the end, she hired him on the spot. With barely enough cash for 2 months of rent, his cold pitch on LinkedIn turned out to be the best thing he ever did. He was now the head designer of sneakers at Versace and entrusted with an entirely new position created just for him. But she wasn't very clear on what the position entailed. Would he have to move to Milan? Could he work remotely? She was very casual about it all, and Salehe could never get a direct response out of her. So he decided to propose an idea. He asked if he could have his own office in LA and go to Milan once a month to meet with the Versace team. To his surprise, Donatella agreed. Since the position had just been created, Salehe felt like he was starting from scratch. If his market research had taught him one thing, it was that people didn't really care what sneakers looked like. They just cared about the brand that made them. But Salehe didn't want to make anything mediocre. Instead, he wanted you to like, comment, and subscribe. His goal was to make something that not only looked good, but could also be recognized as Versace immediately. He was on a mission to create the peacock of shoes, and the chain reaction was just that. It visibly included Versace's rich heritage and made everyone look. Along with 5 Greca patterns, 2 Medusas, and 3 Versace logos, it also included some of Salehe's past. The Cuban link chain outsole was an entirely new concept and reminded Salehe of his time spent in New York City. With the perfect combination of heritage and aesthetics, Versace's chain reaction exploded in popularity and became a staple in high fashion. And with Salehe's help, Versace had successfully entered the sneaker industry. For the next 3 years, Salehe continued to develop their footwear department and rose in rank, eventually becoming Versace's senior director of sneakers and men's footwear. But even that wasn't enough for him, and by the time his contract with Versace was coming to an end, Salehe was ready for more. For quite some time, he had sights on launching his own brand, and on January 1st, 2021, Salehe revealed it to the world. SPUNGE, a brand to house his namesake collaborations and individual work. Now free from Versace, Salehe was able to navigate the streetwear and sneaker industry at will. He began landing collaborations almost instantly and quickly found himself locked in a Paris hotel room with none other than Joe Grondin, the senior manager of global collaborations at New Balance. After that meeting, New Balance became one of the first brands Salehe collaborated with. In addition to the Finders Keepers 3.0s, it was Salehe's work on the New Balance 2002 Rs that launched him into the mainstream spotlight, signifying a new era of storytelling. Drawing inspiration from his life and the many adventures he partakes in, Salehe began implementing nature into every aspect of his design. His first pair of 2002 Rs, titled Peace Be the Journey, were inspired by his early morning hikes around Arizona's Antelope Valley. Not only did these shoes capture the sunrise with a yellow and orange colorway, they also came packaged in a special box that featured an illustration of the exact canyon that they were inspired by. With his second pair of 2002 Rs, Salehe ditched the mountains and went to the rivers. Calling them Water Be the Guide, this pair of New Balance 2002 Rs featured a deep teal colorway that represented the cold and warm waters flowing through Havasu Falls. Although these 2 shoes garnered him mainstream success, it was his next collaboration with New Balance that ultimately broke the internet. After gluing a whistle on the back of a 574, Salehe grabbed his prototype and walked into his meeting with New Balance. Judging from glances around the room, people were confused by the shoe he had brought with him. Catching their confusion, Salehe began telling them a story. It began with him going on a hike with a group of friends, but partway through the hike, he got lost all by himself and couldn't find his friends anymore. Now, completely isolated from the group, nighttime was approaching and he only had one solution left, one that could save his life and reunite him with his friends. Taking off his shoe, Salehe reached down and picked up the prototype he had brought with him. Raising the New Balance 574 to his face, Salehe blew the whistle on the back of the shoe and everyone's face in the room dropped. Salehe had just reinvented a New Balance classic. Although he had always prioritized function within his designs, this was something new. This wasn't just a shoe for the outdoors, it was a shoe that could save lives. With the release of his initial 574 yurts, Salehe helped New Balance target a completely new demographic. Everyone from avid hikers to casual weekenders were buying his shoe and testing it out. Over the course of a year, Salehe would go on to create multiple 574 yurt colorways for New Balance. At the same time, other brands began noticing the impact he had on the outdoors market, and they immediately took interest. Among the first was Crocs, who presented him an opportunity to create his very own namesake model. They weren't just offering him a collab, they were offering him a chance to introduce a completely new silhouette and change the heritage of Crocs forever. Jumping at the opportunity, Salehe immediately got to work. Instead of the smooth, traditional Croc upper, his would have ridges. Ridges that are an exact replica of his very own fingerprint. To his surprise, Crocs agreed, and Salehe eventually launched his Crocs Pollux clog in December of 2021, introducing to the world a shoe that was tied to his DNA. After selling out immediately, Salehe and Crocs went on to deliver an entire line of Crocs Pollux clogs in various colors. Continuing his collaborations, Salehe has since collabed with Canada Goose, the NBA, and Vans, the latter of which offered a selection of shoes and apparel that featured his now iconic fingerprint design. Although he is known for his unique take on footwear design, Salehe doesn't necessarily want to be known as a sneaker guy. After being in the industry for 15 years, he's seen a lot of creatives fall victim to the consumer, and he doesn't want his talents to get boxed in. Instead, he wants to leave behind a legacy of versatility, one where he not only designs shoes, but ventures into other industries such as furniture, tech, automobiles, and more. Recognizing his talent, LeBron James named Salehe Bembury as the creative director of his brand Uninterrupted, where Salehe currently serves to help empower athletes as creators to inspire social impact. Now in a position to help others, Salehe is on a mission to provide inclusion, opportunity, and resources for people like him. Kids from all over the world are inspired by Salehe, and while the fashion industry has long marketed to Black consumers, representation and roles that shape the space have traditionally been light. When asked for advice, Salehe doesn't shy away from all the hard work it took to get him where he is today. Where I am in my career is a result of all the jobs I hated and all the jobs I loved, the successes and the failures. It's about the journey. And with that, I conclude the unboxing of Salehe Bembury.